Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are going to be going for a little bit of silliness on the Karakazgal map, playing as the Empire against the Skaven, and as you can immediately see, things are about to get ridiculous because we are running the Flying Goon Squad. So, the Empire is the only faction the only faction who have a hero unit that can get the exact same mounts as their lords do, as the top mount for their lords. You can get Griffin for your Amber Wizards. And while the stats are not quite as high as they are in, say, Boris or much less Karl or even an Empire General, it's still very solid, of course, and still a very monstrous amount to have easily available. So here, knowing I was going against Skaven, I figured Fear, Terror, the high mobility of their flyers, and the fact that Skaven don't have too many counters except Howling Warp Gale and Warp Lightning Fire, I figured I have a very good chance of making this work. So for my lord, I did bring Boris Todbringer, and the main reason here is because, of course, I wanted some self-sustain. He does, of course, have the Midland Runefang for healing. He also does have Crush the Weak as well as White Cloak of Ulrich. So massive melee attack debuffs and a -4 leadership debuff. And it's actually pretty cool because the Amber Wizards get the Blood Roar effect. So you get, if you dive in, you can easily drop your opponent's leadership through Fear. You hit him with Fear, that drops it a bunch. Blood Roar is another -8 on top of Fear. And then once you drop him below 50%, which is pretty easy on Skaven, it's another -4 from Crush the Weak, and then Terror, of course, tends to set it in, and that's usually end game. Alongside that, of course, one Ember Wizard here both Ember Wizards have a Power Stone. One is kitted out with the Curse of Honorar, just to debuff my opponent's melee attack or speed if I need to get out of dodge. Flock of Doom, just to clear up Skaven mobs, because of course Skaven tend to blob up and have massive squares of infantry, and Wiston's Wild Form as a cheap support spell. I also do have Wild Heart, of course, to improve power reserves, and a Power Stone as mentioned before in both. For my front line, it is a mix of 2 units of Raid Swords, which basically trash everything except Plaguemonk Sensor Bearers, and then some Flagellants and Sigmar Sons. And these guys will, of course, beat or trade effectively with everything, including Plague Monks, except, of course, Stormvermin. And that's what the Great Swords are there for. So definitely, I'm able to handle basically any infantry my opponent puts on the field. The biggest threat is of some Rat Ogres or Hell Pit Abominations, and for those we do have a unit of Sterling's Revenge, as well as some Free Company Militia to shoot those sorts of units down. Also a unit of Empire Knights and a unit of Reichsguard to provide some further heavy support. Heavy Cav tends to be very powerful against Skaven. Most of their units are pretty squishy, they tend to collapse rather quickly, and don't really have the mass to stop them. And if my opponent did bring a Hell Pit Abomination, things could get a little crunk, but he didn't, and nonetheless, these guys definitely could probably goon out a Hell Pit Abomination. For my opponent, though, you can see I did some maneuvers there, trying to safely kite back with my lords. The moment I saw he had a lot of artillery, he did decide to do an interesting build here. So he brought Queek. You can see a very compact build. He brought Queek here with the Dwarf Gouger, which is a nice little augment to damage, Trophy Heads, which is a great enemy hero debuff, Stand Your Ground, Verminous Valor, of course, and Warp Shard Armor, which is a -18 armor debuff. And that can definitely be pretty potent. He also does have an Assassin hidden out here on the flanks with further Trophy Heads, the Smoke Bombs. I'm not entirely sure what else is mixed in here. Probably some more nasty debuffs. He does have Rival High Talisman, and of course Slippery. Then he does have a whole bunch of Clan Rats. You can see 2 on one flank, 3 on the other. His front line is a whole bunch of Clan Rat Spears, so basically trying to just hold the front line while his Poison Wind Globadiers tear through any large units I might bring and apply some pressure to my infantry. You can see already his catapults are doing some pressure to my front line. You can see the Sigmar Sons to competing, and the Free Company Militia have already lost 15 models. My opponent also does have some very significant artillery contingent, 2 Warp Lightning Cannons as well as a Plague Law Catapult, meaning that I'm definitely in for a rough time if these guys keep firing. Now, one of the problems here is that my opponent, as you can see, has not defended his backline. He doesn't have any, and you can see, though, he's teeing off on my lords here. He's going to land a few hits on Boris. He's not defending his backline. He doesn't have a unit of, say, Stormvermin with Halberds here, so I'm going to be able to do some pretty cheeky maneuvers to shut this down. And that is always a big risk when you're running a very wide formation like this. My opponent has a massive formation here. It's always a very big risk. You can see a Flock of Doom going down immediately, Overcast, of course, and it is going to do some massive work. You can see these guys, of course, are just so blobbed up and such a perfect target for this. They're going to take some massive work there. Over here, in the meantime, the Reichsguard is trying to be cheeky, trying to get a good charge in, but I do back off when I see the Assassin and see that my opponent has fallen back. And in the meantime, the Knights kind of making their way forward. You can see the Great Swords take a little bit of fire, but we're closing, and I know that I can win this frontline engagement easily. I do launch a bit of a cheeky charge here, tearing to just dive through the Poison Wind Globadiers and terror routing the Warp Lightning Cannon in a matter of seconds, and then routing it shortly thereafter. So you can see that massive nuking of enemy leadership is just so powerful, especially against Skaven crews, which are terrible. have terrible leadership to begin with. You can see if we scroll over here, you can see the 63 leadership. Actually, it's not as bad as I thought, but still not very good. In the meantime, over here, you can see the Empire Knights just going in, all as courageous as can be, diving into these Poison Wind Globadiers, applying massive pressure as the flagellants tear through. And of course, Empire Knights, despite being, of course, being going to be pressured here by Poison Wind Globadiers, and by spears, they do have so much armor that they'll be very tanky. And they do have 30 melee defense here with their chevrons. In the meantime, over here, I'm able to tear out and scare off these Poison Globadiers. So my opponent is definitely struggling here. He just does not have the manpower to really stop me. Unfortunately, here, Boris does get hit by trophy heads, and he takes a massive amount of damage. I wasn't paying enough attention. He's going to be taking a beating. Over here, Flock of Doom does help melt down this blob of infantry. And you can see the Reichsguard have gotten into the cookie jar here, slaughtering this Plague Law catapult crew. So Reichsguard, of course, paying their dues very effectively. You can see units are already shattering to that massive overload of debuffs. Unfortunately, Boris does not nearly get slain here. You can see he drops to 1400 HP, and I just simply pull him away, looking to regen his HP as I perform some mop-up operations on the ground. You can see War Blinding Cannons just being run off. I'm trying to get rid of my opponent's artillery presence, make sure it doesn't come back, and in the meantime, you can see the Amber Wizards popping Power Stones and diving into the fray here, aiming to shatter and break these clan rats. And with, of course, Boris is still floating around. He's still providing that debuff, dropping their speed, dropping their melee attack. You can see that atrocious. Their stats are atrocious right now, and of course he's providing all those debuffs, and they're just getting. These guys are just having a terrible time of it. In the front line here, the assassin has dove into my free company militia, but there are no pushovers in melee. Similarly, Queek, despite being pretty potent in melee, is going to struggle against the Sterling Revenge, who have very good melee stats, and especially for skirmish unit, they'll just be able to trade with him for days. Great swords over here, you can see, will just slaughter the clan rats with spears. It's really not a contest. Over here, I'm trying to use the flagellants to stun my opponent away. As my cavalry kind of shuts down the remainder of my opponent's troops, you can see I'm trying to get rid of these Poison Wind Globadiers, trying to get rid of the heavy support. You can see running down the Plague Law catapult crew over here, and then you're going to go after these Poison Wind Globadiers over there. So just trying to wipe everything out. And you can see, of course, these guys will rally from the terror route. They are able to outpace even the flagellants, but nonetheless, they are in for a very rough time, simply due to all the fear and terror here. And you can see another dive bomb going in. Despite the Amber Wizard being pretty badly beaten, he does dive in that instant terror route. And this is just a very brutal strategy that's Skaven. And these, despite having their leadership still on the field, even Stormvermin would be susceptible to this. The thing is, Stormvermin, despite how in some ways potent they are, they don't have immunity to psychology that would collapse, then their leadership is not that good. You can just see the collapse that ends up here. My opponent didn't even suffer the most horrendous of losses, as his army does shatter. So basically, a victory decided by sheer overload of debuffs. So as you can see, the kill count was not particularly impressive for the Griffins and for the Amber Wizards. Obviously, the one who was casting Flock of Doom got a decent amount done, but nonetheless, their main contribution here was not damage up. But you can see the flagellants easily raking in over 100 kills, 90 kills. Great swords all raking in good amounts of kills. The Free Company militia got tied down fighting heroes, so not much to expect there. And you can see the cavalry as well gaining chevrons. The Reichsguard gained 2, the Empire Knights gained 1. They did go in with 2 chevrons, and just doing an immense amount of work. And that, I think, really displays just how little damage really the flyers here were doing. But that fear, terror, the debuffs were just huge. Boris, of course, provides the White Cloak of Ulrich, as well as the debuffs from Crush the Weak. And when you stack it on top of Blood Roar, on top of Fear, which I do believe is about -10, maybe -12 leadership, you get the flank charge penalty, you get the Fear penalty, you get Blood Roar penalty, which is -8. Then you get, on top of that, of course, Crush the Weak kicks in, usually, because your opponent's leadership has tanked so much, which is another -4. And at that point, terror, especially against these low-end Skaven units, sets in incredibly easily, especially with how much damage your charge is doing and all that sort of stuff. So it's very, very potent. And even if your opponent brought, say, Stormvermin don't really have the mass, and they don't have quite the leadership to stand up to that. Plague Monks might have a little more of a chance just because they have the immunity psychology. But simply put, Clan Rats especially, and even Stormvermin would suffer against that. The main counters that my opponent could have brought were, of course, a Hell Pit Abomination, an actual caster with the Howling Warp Gale, so obviously I could have played a little smarter and tried to get into the artillery park a little more easily. Definitely some Stormvermin would have helped, I think, with halberds, simply to prevent my cavalry from shutting down the War Blinding Cannon so easily. It's definitely something you want to watch out for. So this was kind of an optimal situation in some ways, but at the same time, it definitely shows potency of the Griffins, just how much damage they can do, how destructive they can be, and how overwhelming they can be. And despite everything, Lore of Wilds is not bad. If you're worried about Skaven and you don't think you can necessarily handle him, you can always bring Amber Spear. It's actually a decent tool against blobbed up heavy armor infantry. Of course, Flock of Doom is great. You've got the Curse of Honorary is not bad, and Wiston's Vial form very sad. Honestly, if you can even use the Manticore if you wanted to, you could bring that to shut down enemy backline troops, or the Pan's Wild Belt is not bad, or the Pan's Belt, whatever it is actually not bad either. So definitely some pretty potent options there for Empire. And it's really up to you to choose, but I definitely think the flying build's valuable as long as you're willing to kind of work around it, try to build an army that can suit it, and use it against opponents that are susceptible to it, like Skaven, like perhaps Greenskins, and those sorts of troops. So I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do hope you find it entertaining. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, if you just want to bash me for being a scumbag here with this sort of terror build, feel free to post down in the comments. I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.